All right, boys and girls, before we do day 3, going to town part 1, I want to look back at your study guide on day 2 questions. Now, this should already be completed. We're just going to go over it to make sure that your answers are correct and that you understand what you're reading. So let's look at number 1, where are all the babies during the dance? Now, if you go back to page 142 and you look at the bottom, it says, the big room filled with tall boots and swishing skirts, and ever so many babies were lying in rows on Grandma's bed. So, where are all the babies during the dance? How would you answer that? Something to the effect of, the babies are laying on Grandma's bed. That's a simple enough answer. You have a subject, a verb. It makes complete sense. You start it with a capital letter and you end it with an N mark. Now look at number 2. Why do the two Lauras argue? Well, look at the bottom of page 142, and it says the two Lauras leaned on the bed and looked at the babies. And the other Laura said her baby was prettier than baby Carrie. So what was their argument about? They were arguing over what? I think that one's pretty self-explanatory. Now look at number 3. Where is Grandma and what is she doing while everyone is dancing? Turn to page 145 and look at the very bottom paragraph, and it tells exactly what Grandma was doing. I'm going to read it. In the kitchen, Grandma was all by herself, stirring the boiling syrup in the big brass kettle. So, that answers your question, where was Grandma? Number 4, it's answered for you. You don't have to worry about that one. Now look at number 5. After jigging for a while, Uncle George's boots do not thump quite as loudly as they had at first. Why? So you have 4 choices. He's wearing out the dance floor, the music is slowing down, he is wearing out the heels of his boots, or he is getting tired. What do you think? And look at number 6. How does Uncle George signal that he is finished jigging? Well, if you look at, let's see here, if you look at page 149, the very last sentence, it actually starts on 149 and ends on 150, the top of 150. All at once, he threw up both arms and he gasped, "I'm beat." Number 7, what are 3 special things that are made from the sap of the sugar maple trees? Now this one, you can just answer a 1-word or 2-word answer. You don't have to do a complete sentence on this. If you did, great job, but you don't have to. So let's think about it. What is the first thing? Maple what? What was she stirring in the pot in the kitchen? What was that called? Okay. The second thing, remember when they came and they dipped their plates in the snow and they came back in and she poured that on the snow? That was called soft maple what? And then finally, partway through the dance, she calls out to her Aunt Docia and Aunt Ruby, her children, and she says, it's graining, it's graining. And so they run around, they come in there, and they're all trying to collect what? Maple what? So there's 3 things that they actually get from the sap of the sugar maple tree. All right, now look at your questions for study guide, day number 3, going to town part 1, and let's read over those so we can be good detectives. Tracking finger. Why do you think Laura's and Mary's faces and ankles are brown at the end of the day? Number 2, where do the girls have their playhouses? Number 3, list the animals on the Ingalls farm. Number 4, what was the deer wondering as it looked at Pa? Number 5, why won't Pa hunt again until fall? Number 6 and 7, you have multiple choice. Why was it hard for the girls to play going to town? Number 7, as the wagon nears the town, how does the road change? So think about these questions while we're reading. So we will start then on page 156, Going to Town, Part 1. Here we go. After the sugar snow had gone, spring came. Birds sang in the leafing hazel bushes along the crooked rail fence. The grass grew green again, and the woods were full of wildflowers. Buttercups and violets, thimble flowers, and tiny starry grass flowers were everywhere. As soon as the days were warm, Laura and Mary begged to be allowed to run barefoot. At first they might only run out around the woodpile and back in their bare feet. Next day they could run farther, and soon their shoes were oiled and put away, and they ran barefoot all day long. Every night they had to wash their feet before they went to bed. Under the hems of their skirts, their ankles and their feet were as brown as their faces. They had playhouses under the 2 big oak trees in front of the house. Mary's playhouse was under Mary's tree, and Laura's playhouse was under Laura's tree. The soft grass made a green carpet for them. The green leaves were the roofs, and through them they could see bits of the blue sky. Pa made a swing of tough bark and hung it to a large low branch of Laura's tree. It was her swing because it was in her tree, but she had to be unselfish and let Mary swing in it whenever she wanted to. Mary had a cracked saucer to play with, and Laura had a beautiful cup with only one big broken piece out of it. Charlotte and Nettie and the 2 little wooden men Pa had made lived in the playhouse with them. Every day they made fresh leaf hats for Charlotte and Nettie, and they made little leaf cups and saucers to set on their table. The table was a nice smooth rock. Sukey and Rosie the cows were turned loose in the woods now to eat the wild grass and the juicy new leaves. There were 2 little calves in the barnyard, and 7 little pigs with the mother hog in the pig pen. In the clearing he had made last year, Pa was plowing around the stumps and putting in his crops. One night he came in from work and said to Laura, "What do you think I saw today?" She couldn't guess. "Well," Pa said, "when I was working in the clearing this morning, I looked up, and there at the edge of the woods stood a deer. She was a doe, a mother deer, and you'll never guess what was with her." "A baby deer!" Laura and Mary guessed together, clasping their hands. "Yes," Pa said, "her fawn was with her. It was a pretty little thing, the softest fawn color with big dark eyes. It had the tiniest feet, not much bigger than my thumb, and it had slender little legs and the softest muzzle. It stood there and looked at me with its large soft eyes, wondering what I was. It was not afraid at all." "You wouldn't shoot a little baby deer, wouldn't you, Pa?" "Would you, Pa?" Laura said. "No, never," he answered. "Nor its Ma, nor its Pa. No more hunting now till all the little wild animals have grown up. We'll just have to do without fresh meat till fall." Pa said that as soon as he had the crops in, they would all go to town. Laura and Mary could go too. They were old enough now. They were very much excited, and next day they tried to play going to town. They could not do it very well because they were not quite sure what a town was like. They knew there was a store in town, but they had never seen a store. Can you imagine never seeing a store? Nearly every day after that, Charlotte and Nettie would ask if they could go to town. But Laura and Mary always said, "No, dear, you can't go this year. Perhaps next year. If you are good, then you can go." Then one night Pa said, "We'll go to town tomorrow." That night, though it was the middle of the week, Ma bathed Laura and Mary all over, and she put up their hair. She divided their long hair into wisps, combed each wisp with a wet comb, and wound it tightly on a bit of a rag. There were knobby little bumps all over their heads, whichever way they turned on their pillows. In the morning, then, their hair would be curly. They were so excited that they did not go to sleep at once. Ma was not sitting with her mending basket as usual. She was busy getting everything ready for a quick breakfast and laying out the best stockings and petticoats and dresses and Pa's good shirt and her own dark brown calico with the little purple flowers on it. The days were longer now. In the morning, Ma blew out the lamp before they finished breakfast. It was a beautiful, clear spring morning. Ma hurried Laura and Mary with their breakfast, and she washed the dishes quickly. They put on their stockings and shoes while she made the beds. Then she helped them put on their best dresses. Mary's china blue calico and Laura's dark red calico. Mary buttoned Laura up the back, and then Ma buttoned Mary. Ma took the rags off their hair and combed it into long, round curls that hung down over their shoulders. She combed so fast that the snarls hurt dreadfully. Mary's hair was beautifully golden, but Laura's was only a dirt-colored brown. When their curls were done, Ma tied their sunbonnets under their chins. She fastened her collar with the gold pin, and she was putting on her hat when Pa drove up to the gate. He had curried the horses till they shone. He had swept the wagon box clean and laid a clean blanket on the wagon seat. Ma, with baby Carrie in her arms, sat up on the wagon seat with Pa, and Laura and Mary sat on a board fastened across the wagon box behind the seat. They were happy as they drove through the springtime wood. Carrie laughed and bounced. Ma was smiling, and Pa whistled while he drove the horses. The sun was bright and warm on the road. Sweet, cool smells came out of the leafy woods. Rabbits stood up in the road ahead, their little front paws dangling down and their noses sniffing, and the sun shone through their tall, twitching ears. Then they bounded away with the flash of little white tail. Twice Laura and Mary saw deer looking at them with their large, dark eyes from the shadows among the trees. It was 7 miles to town. The town was named Pepin, and it was on the shore of Lake Pepin. After a long time, Laura began to see glimpses of blue water between the trees. The hard road turned to soft sand. The wagon wheels went deep down in it, and the horses pulled and sweated. Often Pa stopped them to rest for a few minutes. Then all at once the road came out of the woods, and Laura saw the lake. It was as blue as the sky, and it went to the edge of the world. As far as she could see, there was nothing but flat blue water. Very far away, the sky and the water met, and there was a darker blue line. The sky was large overhead. Laura had never known that the sky was so big. There was so much empty space all around her that she felt small and frightened and glad that Pa and Ma were there. Suddenly, the sunshine was hot. The sun was almost overhead in the large empty sky, and the cool woods stood back from the edge of the lake. Even the big woods seemed smaller under so much sky. Pa stopped the horses and turned around on the wagon seat. He pointed ahead with his whip. "There you are, Laura and Mary," he said. "There's the town of Pepin." Laura stood up on the board, and Pa held her safe by the arm so she could see the town. When she saw it, she could hardly breathe. She knew how Yankee Doodle felt when he could not see the town because there were so many houses. Right on the edge of the lake, there was one great big building. That was the store, Pa told her. It was not made of logs. It was made of wide gray boards running up and down. The sand spread all around it. Behind the store was a clearing larger than Pa's clearing in the woods at home. Standing among the stumps, there were more houses than Laura could count. They were not made of logs either. They were made of boards like the store. Laura had never imagined so many houses, and they were so close together. Of course, they were much smaller than the store. One of them was made of new boards that had not had time to get gray. It was the yellow color of newly cut wood. People were living in all these houses. Smoke rose up from their chimneys. Though it was not Monday, some women had spread out a washing on the bushes and stumps by the house. Several girls and boys were playing in the sunshine in the open space between the store and the houses. They were jumping from one stump to the next stump and shouting. "Well, that's Pepin," Pa said. Laura just nodded her head. She looked and could not say a word. After a while she sat down again, and the horses went on. They left the wagon on the shore of the lake. Pa unhitched the horses and tied one to each side of the wagon box. Then he took Laura and Mary by the hand, and Ma came beside them, carrying baby Carrie. They walked through the deep sand to the store. The warm sand came in over the tops of Laura's shoes. There was a wide platform in front of the store, and at the end of its steps went up to it out of the sand. Laura's heart was beating so fast she could hardly climb the steps. She was trembling all over. This was the store to which Pa came to trade his furs. When they went in, the storekeeper knew him. So we're going to stop right there at the bottom of page 167. Now I want you to take out your comprehension sheets, and I want you to be good detectives and take your time and write out your answers in complete sentences. I miss you, little sweetie pies. I love you so much.